Hi everyone, welcome to our sixth Workplace Ninjas Netherlands live Ask Us Anything recording. My name is Frans Oudendorp and together with my friend Ronny de Jong, we are hosting these monthly live Ask Us Anything sessions. And you probably already know it, but if you have suggestions about topics or have feedback, please feel free to reach out and let us know. The recording of these sessions will be posted on YouTube and all different podcast platforms. So know that the video and the audio is recorded and published afterwards. When the recording is available, we will post that on our social channels. Ronny, welcome. What do we have today on the topic of endpoint analytics? Can you tell us a little bit more about our guest and the topic that we have today?
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to do so. Everyone, welcome who is joining us this session, or for those which are listening this podcast afterwards. Today we are welcoming Albert Cabello Serrano. He's program manager from Microsoft, and during this session, live Ask Us Anything session, as you mentioned in the introduction, Frans, we are talking about Endpoint Analytics, which is part of the Microsoft Endpoint Manager suite. And it gives you much insights about how we are working. And as mentioned, Albert is joining us today. So Albert, perhaps welcome, great to have you. Please, can you introduce yourself briefly for our listeners?
Absolutely. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Albert Cabello. I'm a lead program manager on the Endpoint Manager team, and I'm responsible for two analytics products, so Desktop Analytics and Endpoint Analytics. I'm an old timer now. I guess I've been with Microsoft for 20 years, and I had like different. I've been working on different products over the last 20 years, but for the last 3 years or so, I've been working on management tools with Microsoft. So very happy to be here with you guys.
Well, thank you, Albert. And one of the formats, these podcasts, we are starting always with a few statements, and from there we will take it and. Let's start the conversation. Our listeners who are joining us, if they have questions, they will drop questions in the chat, or feel free to mute yourself or raise your hand. And with Albert, we're trying to address these questions as good as possible, and what it takes to move on with endpoint analytics. So. The first statement, Albert, endpoint analytics solves the lack of visibility into the end user experience. Is that a right or a wrong statement?
That's a right statement. One of the things that we attempted to do with endpoint analytics is give IT admins visibility into the quality of the experience that they are providing to their users, right? Like IT admins. They have a very good definition of what a good quality of experience means and what it is. You know, like everything works, everything is fast, like nobody's complaining. But up until now, they had like very few channels to get that feedback back. You know, to really understand if the quality of the experience that they're providing is good or not. So what we're trying to do with Endpoint Analytics is providing you visibility into how are things going and give you insights on how you can improve things.
Okay, well, that's a fair answer. We will go into a little bit more details later on. Without telemetry data, we can improve our modern cloud management solution to let organizations to achieve more.
Oh, that's an interesting one. So yes, telemetry, it's an interesting word. So we'll probably want to go also deep into that. So what I would say is, knowledge is power, right? Like the more data that you have, the better decisions that you can make. So one of the things that we aim to do with endpoint analytics is to use the data that it's available, from your organization, from other organizations, and put that into context so that you can make good decisions. but yeah, I totally believe on the power of data and making data-driven decisions as a way of improving the quality of the experience you are providing to users.
Okay, thanks for that answer. And the last statement is endpoint analytics somewhat is underexposed in the overwhelming range of Microsoft 365 feature set.
That's a true statement. So endpoint analytics is a feature of Endpoint Manager. So if you are licensed for Endpoint Manager, whether it is you are on Config Manager or you are co-managed or you are on Intune native, you have access to Endpoint Analytics, and Endpoint Manager and Endpoint Analytics are features of Microsoft 365. So together, Endpoint Analytics and Microsoft 365 can help you be more productive. Absolutely, true statement.
We're trying to, with this podcast, we are trying to contribute somewhat to being an advocate of endpoint analytics, and also let organizations and IT admins understand the value proposition of endpoint analytics. And of course, we all do understand that we have a busy agenda, but sometimes you have to invest in the right solution. And I think with the conversation moving on, hopefully it will clear. It's not rocket science in the sense of enabling it and take benefit of it. I believe we are lifted off, and you mentioned it already, Albert. Can you provide a brief description of what endpoint analytics entails? For those which are not familiar with it, what problem or what challenge are we trying to solve with endpoint analytics?
Sure. So I'm working on my analogies. So you guys are going to hear me using some analogies, right? Like one of the analogies that I use is the analogy of a road trip, right? Like when you go on a road trip, right? The important thing is the destination and the things that you're going to be doing during your vacation. But the car better be ready to take you on that road trip, right? Like the car better turn on, and the tires having air and everything working perfectly. So one of the things that we do with Endpoint Analytics is making sure that technology is not getting on the way of users working every day, right? Like the important thing is not truly, how the computer is configured or not configured. The important thing is that users can achieve the things that they need to achieve with their devices. So what we do with Endpoint Analytics is we aim to give you a 360 view of what can get in the middle of users doing the things that they need to do on a day-to-day basis. So one of the sad stories that we started with was we were hearing from customers that some users were going and having a coffee while the device was booting because their device was taking like 10 minutes to boot. So, they would just press the power on button, go have a coffee, and then come back. And that is productivity loss, right? So we started with that hypothesis of, what are the things that we want to give admins visibility on things that they have control over, right? Like what are the things that you guys as IT admins have control over and you can have an influence on making better for users. So we started with the classic example of, what happens between power on to being able to launch whatever app and get started with your day. The second scenario that we started with, and that, by the way, that's the scenario that we call it boot performance on Endpoint Analytics today. The second scenario that we've been working on, which is currently on public preview, is application health. Once the device is turned on, what do users do? They interact with apps, the mail app, the spreadsheet app, the presentation app, right? So we are aiming to give visibility into our apps performing well. Our apps, crashing in the middle of, like people working on a document or people writing an email, and giving that visibility to admins so that they can understand, if people are having problems or not. And this is because most of the issues go underreported, right? Again, my analogies, right? Like how many times you don't go to the doctor because it will pass. Like this is not an important thing enough to go to the doctor. It will pass. And like most of the issues, like you and I are techies, right? Like we know when something is wrong and we're gonna try to fix it. But like most of the users don't think like that. They just go along with their lives with things not working or half working, and that really has an impact on productivity. Yeah. So the scenarios that we're attacking with Endpoint Analytics are all towards giving visibility to admins into all those issues that might be impacting, users getting on with their lives, and especially those issues that would go underreported, because it's hard for users to pick up the phone and call support. And the other interesting thing about that scenario is that support, it's always going to be super focused on that one call, right? Like it doesn't matter to support that there might be another 1,000 people with the same issue. They're only going to solve, that one call that they have.
Yeah, exactly.
So Endpoint Analytics can help you identify if an issue, how spread an issue is. It's a specific application failing for one user or all your users, and then kind of like get ahead of the curve in trying to solve that issue before it becomes like a real problem.
So actually getting back to the analogy, you're heading to a vacation is making sure that you're going to your vacation in a comfortable way, and even better, taking the shortest route to your destination instead of taking the bad road and with different turns, so make your journey much more longer than, and that's not necessarily the case then. Okay, yeah, interesting. So actually what you mentioned in the introduction, data-driven, using the data and based on the data, the figures, and based on that, it gives you, as an IT admin, the possibility to take action and make the data actionable. Actually, that's actually what you're doing, right?
That's absolutely what we're doing. And as I mentioned in the intro, right, like my team is the team that also created Windows and Desktop Analytics. So one of the things that we learned through that journey is putting that data in context is very powerful, right? Yeah. Like you probably have heard people say, well, my computer is super slow. Well, what does that mean? Like, is it super slow just for you? Is it super slow, for everyone in the org? Is it super slow for everyone on the ecosystem? Or, hey, like this application is crashing a lot. Is it crashing a lot for a particular set of devices? Is it crashing a lot for your organization? Or is it crashing a lot for everyone? So one of the things that we learned with Windows and Desktop Analytics was that it was very powerful to put that information in context. If your application is crashing a lot for you, but on the rest of the ecosystem, that application is not crashing, you know that there is something that is specific to either the configuration of your devices or how your organization is set up that is affecting that application. Conversely, if your application is crashing a lot, but it's crashing a lot for everyone, what you need to do is pick up the phone and talk to the manufacturer on that application and tell them, hey, like there is something really wrong with your application. Like it's crashing like crazy for everyone. So that being able to compare, to give you visibility over your state and how your state compares with everyone else, it's super important. And the interesting thing here, and this is almost like something where we have an advantage, right, is we know a lot, both from the perspective of Windows being, the most used operating system in the world. Like we have a lot of signals of that we can use to determine if an application is healthy, if if the experience that users are having is good. And then, from a management tools perspective, we are also one of the top management tools out there. So we are able to put all this data together to essentially give you those insights back.
Yeah. You mentioned a few solutions already, like Windows Analytics, Desktop Analytics. Correct me if I'm wrong, we have Workplace Insights. We're talking about Endpoint Analytics. Sometimes hearing from our customers, it's confusing. So many solutions, and each of some solutions have a kind of an overlap, but sometimes they are completely different. Can you help us provide us some more clarity on it, on the proposition of each of those, and which one we should focus on these solutions.
Yeah, again, story of me being old and having worked at Microsoft for a long time. I used to work on the developer division. So I work on a product called TFS Online that then was renamed to Visual Studio Online, that then was renamed to Visual Studio Team Services, that now is called Azure DevOps. So I don't know if I work on one product or four, but like one of the things that we do at Microsoft is we really like changing names of products and rebranding things. So here's how the story works. Windows Analytics used to be a combination of three services. Those three services were upgrade readiness. That was a service that would help you stay current with new versions of Windows. There was another service called device health that was starting to give you visibility into app and driver crashes. And there was a third product called update compliance, which was all about, once I'm on a new version of Windows, am I keeping up with cumulative patches and new viruses, antiviruses definitions for Defender? So that was Windows Analytics. Two of those solutions, upgrade readiness and device health, kind of like evolve into what you know today as desktop analytics. So the service that you would use today, if you have any concerns, if you have any problems in terms of keeping current with Windows, desktop analytics is the service that you would use for that. Update compliance, it's still there as a standalone service for, once you are on that new version of Windows, making sure that everyone is picking up the cumulative patches and that they are up to date with antivirus definitions and so forth. So desktop analytics, the service that you use to keep current with Windows. If you have any concerns with app compatibility, with applications or drivers that might have issues, from update to update, and then update compliance to make sure that you keep current. This is what we learn through talking to customers about desktop analytics, right? An OS upgrade, for more than I as Microsoft would like you to keep up to date with Windows every 6 months. Like the reality is that most of the companies, the upgrade event is an event that happens, at best once a year. But in general, those projects take longer, right? So the whole notion of understanding the quality of the experience that we are providing, understanding if applications are healthy, that's a concern that goes beyond an OS upgrade or not. Like you really want to know if your mail application is behaving, whether or not you have upgraded to a version of Windows or not. And that's kind of what took us on the journey of creating Endpoint Analytics, which is, look, separate from the OS upgrade that might happen once a year or once every couple of years or once every 6 months. We want to give you visibility into how are things going. How is the quality of the experience that you are providing to users. So how I talk to customers about those two services in particular, desktop analytics and endpoint analytics, is as long as you have concerns or problems keeping up to date with Windows, as long as you have applications that you are not sure if they are going to work or not, and you don't have enough cycles to test all the applications, desktop analytics is this service that is going to help you keeping up to date with Windows. Now, I want you to care about the quality of the experience that you are providing to your users, and the tool for that, independently of what's changing. Are you deploying a new app? Are you deploying a new version of the OS? Are you deploying new policies? Are you deploying new devices? The service for that, it's Endpoint Analytics. That's the service that on a day-to-day basis you would use to understand how technology, and the things that you have control over can get on the way of people getting their stuff done. There are
go ahead, sorry. Yeah.
There are two other kind of services, and one I know more, one I know less. And this is, by the way, like another thing. Like I'm Microsoft. I don't know everything about Microsoft, so there are going to be things that I don't know. Yeah, my sister thinks that I know everything at Microsoft, but that's not quite true. So the tools that we have on Endpoint Manager are all anchored on what you as IT admins have control over, right? But there are some other services that provide insights to different audiences on the company. So Workplace Analytics or My Analytics, those are services that are more tailored towards, how are users working, right? Like, am I overworking? Am I spending too much time on meetings? Is there a way that I could have like more focused time to work on things that I need to work on, or are meetings getting on the middle? So I don't know as much about those services like Workplace Analytics and My Analytics, but the audience for those services understanding kind of like if people are getting burned out, if people are spending too much time on meetings, if people have time to collaborate, who are the people that they collaborate with, and kind of like helping you connect dots, right? Like how awesome would it be if, I knew other people on the company that knows about My Analytics, so I could have invited him to this call, right? So those are kind of like the connections that those services provide. For the IT audience, the services that you guys are going to be exposed to, the services that can help you on your day-to-day lives are things like update compliance, desktop analytics, endpoint analytics, and then all-app productivity score, which is something that you hinted in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, to recapping all those features, you're actually talking about operations excellence from an IT admin perspective, making sure that as an IT admin, you are facilitating the best possible user experience from the configuration perspective, from your OS perspective, and also from an application perspective. Because what you mentioned already, is it an individual problem? Is it the problem with your hardware, which is 5 years old, versus you have a new Surface Laptop 3, which is quickly, or is it a trend in terms of an application is hanging or crashing on all Windows 10 with a certain build? Is it application compatibility with the build, or is it the build itself? Yeah,
that's right. I call it agile IT operations, right? Like I want to make your life easier so that you can spend less time firefighting and more time, planning how to make things better for users. And one good example here is, we've all been through pandemic for a year, right? Working from home for a year. Those organizations that were more prepared on how to allow people working remotely, how to allow people using their own devices. All those organizations that had spent time preparing for that eventuality have gone through this pandemic a little bit easier than those companies that have not thought about that. So one of the things that we want to do with endpoint analytics and productivity score to some extent is we give you visibility into those things that are not working, right? So that you can fix them, so that the sooner you fix them, the sooner you can really spend some quality time improving the life of your users, and this is, you guys know this better than I do, but like IT admins are those unsung heroes where if everything goes well, like nobody's going to give you kudos, nobody's going to give you a raise because, it's expected that it's going to go well, that's your job, right? But like if anything goes wrong, you guys are the first ones on kind of like being pointed at like what's happening. So giving visibility into those things that really need your attention, right? So that you don't have to spend time chasing goals or finding the needle of the haystack. That's one of the value props. That's one of the things that we want to achieve with Endpoint Analytics. And then eventually we want those tools to help you be more efficient at the things that you do, so that you can plan for a better future. You can enable things that are going to help users do more, be more effective, be more productive.
Yeah. How is that shaped in the near future? Are you then aiming for kind of use cases and build that in a modular way into Endpoint Analytics?
I think in the fullness of time, I use this word, in the fullness of time, right? Like I don't know if this is gonna take me like 12 months or 12 years, but I'll tell you what my dream is. My dream is that Endpoint Analytics becomes 3 pillars. There is a pillar that it's about recommendations. So this is about, again, like using the data, what we know about how your organization operates, how other organizations like you operate, how the best organizations out there operate, and give you specific recommendations about what you could do next in order to, get better, right? In order to avoid the next issue, in order to enable users to do more. So there is this component of, I want to give you the right recommendation at the right time, so that you get the best bang for the buck. Here's a silly example, right? If I offer you today an ice cream and it's like 40 degrees outside and it's scorching hot, you're gonna like that ice cream and you're gonna enjoy it and it's the right recommendation. If I give you an ice cream, in the middle of the winter, it might not have the same effect. So part of what I want to do with recommendations is what is the right recommendation at the right time for the right purpose. The second aspect is what I call it safe rollout, which is as you are going on deploying changes. And again, deploying changes can be deploying new devices, deploying new policies, deploying new apps, deploying new OS. I want to give you visibility into how that rollout is going, right? Like the whole notion of, we can prepare the rings for you, we can prepare a pilot for you that is representative for your organization, we can monitor that, we can see the health signals of those devices as they are receiving those changes. Here's a good example, right? Like imagine that you deploy a new driver and most of the devices are just reacting very well to that driver. Like battery life is actually being extended by 20 minutes, but there is a specific model, for the sake of the example, I'm going to call it the Contoso model of laptops, right? That is starting to have problems with application health. I want to help you identify that, the extent of, the issues, and then help you continue the rollout for those devices that are not exhibiting any issues while pausing the rollout for devices that are exhibiting issues. And that way, again, you can focus on solving the problem and stopping the problem from becoming bigger while not putting on hold the entire project. Because one of the things that happens today is the moment that you have like one call, you would stop the entire deployment. And, perhaps you're stopping the entire deployment when there are only like 10 people that could be affected. So that's my second component. I want to give you visibility into, as you deploy changes, how devices are reacting to those changes. And I call that safe rollout. The third pillar is what I call it proactive remediations, which is for those devices that have issues, that experience issues, unexpected issues, I want to help you narrow down what might be the source of that issue, right? Again, like was it a driver that was recently changed? Was like some other application that was installed? And then help you take remediation actions to solve that. So in the future, and again, this might take me 12 months or it might take me 12 years, but what I want to do is give you all those three pillars directly embedded into all the workloads that you have on Endpoint Manager, right? So again, you go on your life as an admin doing the things that you do, and those workloads are just super powered by analytics. You get those additional insights that help you kind of like saying like, yeah, thumbs up, like this deployment went perfect, like no issues, no regressions on the experience before I deploy the change and after deploy the change, and give you that information so you can also prove that to your people. Like this rollout went perfectly. Why? Because I have all the metrics that determine that it went well. Application health is still good. There are no unexpected restarts. The battery life did not get impacted. So those are the things that I'm kind of like working on right now.
Yeah. So actually, this is the ideal world you're describing, and actually, what it takes is just the data, and based on the data, you know what are the recommendations or what is a safe rollout. You can do predictions, and perhaps based on knowledge from other customers or other tenants. Is there also a way of exchanging experience from multiple tenants and put it in a kind of the mix, and based on that you're determining, okay, based on these trends, this will be the recommended set of configuration to give your end users the best possible configuration or user experience. Is that what it is heading to?
That's where we're heading to, and like two examples today is one is the example that we have on desktop analytics, which is this notion of how is the health for your applications compare with what we're seeing on that same application on the overall ecosystem, right? So again, it's this particular application crashing for me more than anyone else, or are we all having a similar ratio of crashes, right? So that's one example. On Endpoint Analytics, we have this notion that we call it baselines, right? Which is it's a similar average, right? So for boot performance, for example, like we have this average of what's the average boot time for everyone out there, right? We want to provide that notion for more and more things. What is the average boot time for particular devices? We want to, in the fullness of time, not all the journeys to modern management for all customers are the same, right? So if you are on the healthcare business, I want to give you how you compare with other organizations on the healthcare business, right? Or if you are on the banking business, I want to compare you with organizations on the banking business. And of course, we want to do this in a way that it's all, compliant and respecting privacy. But like the idea is, again, like the closer we compare you to someone like you, the more appropriate those recommendations would be, right? Like it's almost like, like you go to the movies sometimes based on recommendations from friends, right? Hey, like this movie is good. Hey, have you watched this new TV series, right? So it's not that different, right? Like and you guys know this, like you're more likely to follow recommendations from those that you trust or from those that are like you than, like some random Microsoft person that had their own agenda. So you're going to see us investing more and more on, those things. Like how can we give you recommendations that more related to that context that you have, whether it's the business or the size of the company or where you are on the journey, right? Not going to be the same recommendation if you're just getting into modern management that if you've been doing modern management for 5 years, right?
Yeah. So actually, it goes back to the it's all about the data, and the data is we're heading to a modern workplace, and all the new management solutions give us the ability to take it to the next level actually. But the data is the source of how we can prioritize the recommendations and getting insights how you're performing, how you're doing, and taking actions. That's so. You're already a little bit enlightened it, but what will be the next step or the next big thing? Because we're now talking about endpoint analytics, but we have also productivity data. There's so much data in the whole Microsoft 365 ecosystem. What can you give us some bigger picture of what? Yeah, we are heading to a modern workplace, and I believe within 5 years, every organization is having a modern workplace. What will be then from that perspective, from data driven? What will be? You talked a little bit already about your dreams. What can we expect from there?
Yeah. I think about it, and it might sound a little bit like a repeat, but I think about it a little bit like pilots of planes, right? Like I would not feel comfortable, on a plane that doesn't have a pilot. Like I expect planes to have pilots, right? But like the reality is that pilots are there to supervise. Like a plane pretty much flies itself, like the pilot does take a very active role on the takeoff and landing, but then for the most part, the pilot types, what's the route, and it just lets the plane do its thing. But the pilot is there supervising, and the aspect that is very important there is that if something goes out of the expected parameters, the pilot is there to take over and to do the right thing. So what I want to do is something similar to that, right? Like I'm not replacing IT admins. I love you guys. Like you have job security for a very long time. But what I want you guys to do is to spend more time on, ensuring that there is a good experience for your users and less time firefighting. So all that data, I want that data to accrue to you spending less and less time monitoring things and testing things and just like looking over someone else's shoulder, right? And instead just let the machine do its thing and only take over when things go out of those parameters. So what I'm working on right now, and I mentioned about some of the areas that we've been investing lately, but what I'm working on right now is to give you that 360 view of how a device is operating, and I call that a device score. Like everything that we do on Endpoint Analytics gets reduced to a score, and like the reason we do that, and it's kind of like silly, but like the reason we do that is a score is a number that you can see over time. It's a number that you can compare with others. It's something that we can relate, right? Like I have a Fitbit and I have this sleep score, right? And again, like I don't know exactly what that entails, but I know that 60 is bad and I know that 80 is good, right? So you're gonna see us building that device score as the foundation of all the things that we're gonna log, as the foundation of understanding when a device experience is regressive. Hey, this device was performing really well 2 weeks ago, and now it's performing really bad. What is the area that is performing really bad? Is it application health or is it battery? What is it? Like if it's battery, what are the applications that are affecting the battery life of the device? Or is it that it's misconfigured? Did the user do something that misconfigured the device? So things that you're gonna see me investing on Endpoint Analytics is adding more context into that device score. What is it what we have today? What we have today is, we call it recommended software, which is the device configured properly? We have boot performance, again, what happens between power on and being able to launch your first application. We have application health, which is, for the 8 hours that you're working during the day, are applications behaving or not? You're gonna see us adding things like resource utilization, like is the device performing well from the perspective of the resources available to apps, or is the CPU pegging, is the memory maxing out, and I'm using my page file, and all that accrues to a poor experience with the device. So you're gonna see us giving you more information about resource utilization, both from the perspective of the device as a whole, as well as apps. Are there specific apps that are just pegging the CPU or hogging resources, right? You're gonna see us investing for mobile devices on battery health information, right? Are people having a worse experience with their mobile devices because they need to be plugged to the wall all the time? Are batteries, performing below their design capacity, and it's time to, just replace the battery, right? So you're gonna see us doing all those things. Further down the line, there are things like user sentiment, right? Like we've been talking about data for a long while, and like data is this thing that is like, oh, like it gets manufactured and it gets created, but your feedback as a user, it's a very important data point, right? If I ask you the right question at the right time, I would likely get the right feedback that would be much more indicative than any of the telemetry that I might have collected for today. So again, like if I hear you sneeze and I ask you, hey, are you cold? Do you have a cold? You'll say yes, and I'll use that signal to understand that, well, like there is something that I need to do there.
Yeah.
So
because from a device perspective, from a technical perspective, the device might be performing well, but if the user still experience bad behavior.
Exactly. So you're gonna see us investing on that notion of device score, and once I have that device score is where I can unlock scenarios like, regression analysis. Again, like, was this device performing well and is not performing well now? What changed, right? Once I have that device score, and this is super, super interesting, I can start creating predictive models, right? If this device, if you upgrade to a version of Windows, this is the predicted impact in terms of, how long the boot time is going to be, how long the battery is going to last, right? So again, it's the power of the data and how you use that data to help you make better decisions. I mean, it will be totally awesome if I tell you, hey, for these devices, if you upgrade to a new version of Windows, you are going to have like 20 more minutes of battery. Why? Because, we see from the data from the ecosystem that, the new OS is resulting on, those additional benefits. Or the opposite, don't upgrade, like again, like I'm Microsoft, but like the other case is also true. Hey, it might be better if you hold on upgrading these devices, because right now they are not having a good experience with the new version of Windows. Or, if you add a little bit more memory to these devices, the user will have a better experience, because the apps that he's using, they just require more memory, right? Right sizing hardware. So you're gonna see us doing a lot of that, a lot of like reasoning through, how good of an experience you guys are providing to your users, and what can you do about it.
Yeah, it's awesome, because we already have today in Endpoint Analytics the basic foundation of the configuration, your model performance, should it be replaced from a hardware lifecycle perspective, your buggy applications. But what you're telling us now, the outlook, it's way more sophisticated. You're going drilling into down in the resource perspective. Okay, here we should add more memory, or this is a model which should be replaced entirely. And what you're actually doing then, it's kind of moving your IT from reactive to becoming proactive, and then also more in control, I would say. And what you meant with device score, like secure score or any other compared features with the other feature set of Microsoft 365. If you give it a score, you can make PKIs or KPIs on it, and everyone likes to have an higher score. So you're kind of a gamification.
Here's another example that we hear a lot from customers, and this, like, Microsoft is its own customer, right? Lots of organizations do refresh hardware on a fixed basis, right? Like, you get a new laptop every 3 years, and like, it doesn't really matter whether you needed a laptop well before, because the things that you're doing really require you to have a more powerful laptop, or if the laptop that you have is perfectly fine because you're just doing email and Excel, right? Like, today, everyone gets a laptop every 3 years. How awesome would it be if you, through the tools that you're using, you could advise not just who really requires, a hardware refresh, but what would be the right specs for that user, right? And not only that, like, there might be some cases where, again, like, if you just upgrade the hard drive with an SSD, that user is going to be fine, because the workloads that they are using, they don't require more hardware. Or, hey, you know what? Like, these two users, we could swap their devices and they would both be happy, right? That turns you into superheroes, right? It helps you invest in, your monies, your company's monies the right way, so that then, if there is some project that you really believe in, like, you have the opportunity to tackle on that project, because you have that rapport with your people. So I want to turn you into superheroes. I want you guys to be superheroes on your organizations.
So to wrap it up, also from a time perspective, to become a superhero, Albert, what does it take to becoming a superhero? I would say everyone here in the coach is aiming for becoming a superhero, or is already a superhero. But what it takes to successfully implement Endpoint Analytics.
So first thing, like, if you are using today Config Manager or Endpoint Manager, no matter how you're using Config Manager or Endpoint Manager, you are licensed to use Endpoint Analytics. Endpoint Analytics is a feature of Endpoint Manager. You don't need to, you don't need to pay extra. You don't need to install anything. Like, it's all included on the investments that you already have. If you are a Config Manager customer, what we want you to do is be on a current version of Config Manager. Like, the more current it is, the more capabilities of Endpoint Analytics you unlock. And all that you need is either be tenant attached, so cloud connecting Config Manager to the cloud, because Endpoint Analytics is a cloud service, or turn on co-management. You don't need to move any workloads. You just need to have either tenant attached, be tenant attached for your devices, or have co-management enabled, but you don't need to move any workloads. If you are on Intune, all that it takes, and I know, like, this is gonna sound crazy, but like, if you are on Intune or co-manage, all that it takes is one click. You go to aka.ms/endpoint analytics, and it takes one click to configure your devices for Endpoint Analytics. So that's truly all that you need. I'll also say, if you are on Config Manager today and you are not tenant attached, what are you waiting for? There is a lot of value that you unlock by adding the cloud to your Config Manager. And like nothing changed on your day-to-day lives, but like you unlock things like Endpoint Analytics, Microsoft Defender ATP targeting, Device Explorer, which is super cool. So yeah, no, you don't need to install anything. You don't need to add additional agents. Like it's all included with either Intune management extensions or Config Manager. Yeah, you should get started. You should give it a try.
Sounds to me like low-hanging fruit.
Yes, and one of the things that you hinted at it before, one of the things that we aim for is want to give you all those insights on the same portal. Like I don't want you to have to navigate through like 3 different portals and create, reports to figure out, what are the insights. No, like my business is to give you all those insights integrated in the same portal where you can take action on. And again, like make it as simple as possible for you to take advantage of those insights. So tenant attach, co-manage, Intune native, all that you need is to click one button.
Wow. Many thanks, Albert, for your explanation about Endpoint Analytics and the way you're talking about it. I'm getting excited. I was already excited, and hopefully all our listeners are becoming excited as well, and also becoming superheroes. So many thanks, Albert, for joining us and going into more details about Endpoint Analytics. From here, I'd like to hand it over to Frans.
Yeah, then I will wrap it up. Thanks, Albert. Also, from my side, I think everything is covered that we want to discuss. And especially, I have one question. And in your last thing around the prereqs, you already answered that one. What I hear a lot of from our customers is Endpoint Analytics, Windows Analytics. Windows Analytics was only for Intune. Endpoint Analytics first, it was only Config Manager, and then it expands, and now you're already saying it. It's for both. It's tenant attached with co-management or Config Manager, but also from an Intune or a MEM perspective, you can use it both ways. And I think no one has a problem with that, and they could start today. So hit that button and use Endpoint Analytics in the next few weeks, I say.
Yes, absolutely. We like that visibility that you get by using Endpoint Analytics, like understanding if users are having a good experience or a bad experience. All that it takes is cloud attaching Config Manager if you haven't done yet, and one click. But the data, going back to Ronny and a lot of the conversation that we were having, having that visibility, having that data it's very powerful. Like you being able to validate if users are telling you that the devices are slow or the devices are crashing, being able to validate if it's a one person issue or if the entire organization is impacted by it. That is visibility that you need, especially now that a lot of people are working remotely, right? That you cannot hear people scream down the hall. Tools like Endpoint Analytics give you that visibility, that reassurance of, am I giving a good experience to my users, or is there something that I need to pay attention to? So absolutely, and thanks, Ronny, for all the links that you posted there. Those are absolutely the right links to get familiar with the content. There is I'm happy, to come back on the podcast if there are additional questions, and thank you guys for having me.
Okay, thanks you, and also that links will be posted in the session details of the podcast and the YouTube environment. So thank you for watching and listening to this episode. The next event of our Workplace Ninjas Netherlands community is next week, the 25th of May, where Jan Bakker will give a webinar about learn all about Azure multi-factor authentication. The next live Ask Us Anything session will be on the 29th of June from 4 till 5 p.m. And we are thinking about the subject at the moment. There will be a security topic, and we will announce that next week. If you have any other topics that you want to cover or want to learn from, please don't hesitate to contact us so we can address them in one of our next recordings. So for now, I say thank you all, and until the 29th of June in a new version of Live Ask Us Anything. See you then. Bye-bye.